Hey everyone, just wanted to stop by real quick for this podcast starts and say you should like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to follow me on all my social medias at John D. Clouser, literally the same name as the name that you subscribe to on this YouTube channel. So enjoy this clip, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Fan base has been extraordinary. We're so excited for you. And here to present the trophy is the head of the basketball committee, Tom Burnett, to Coach Self and the Kansas City Jayhawks, the University of Kansas Jayhawks.
Welcome to The John Show with your host, John Doogie Clouser.
All right. What's going on, everyone? How are you? We are here on a new episode of the Juan Solo Show with your host, me, Juan D. Clouser, or you can call me John D. Clouser. This is going to be episode 111 on this beautiful journey that we call the solo podcast that I do by myself because, it's not like, probably I could honestly get anybody to come and do a podcast with me, and it's going to probably do way better than me doing one by myself. But I love doing these by myself because they're just so much fun to practice. It's so much fun to practice doing these little things. This cost me $8 because I buy like a 6-pack. I'll drink a beer while I'm setting stuff up. Drink a beer while I'm doing this show. And just kind of have it, just get her done, and just get it done. You know what I mean? And it's kind of like at this point, I'm like, John, you've done 111 at this point. At the end of this, will be 112. But like, what's the end game? What was honestly the beginning game actually doing this? There really wasn't any. There's just practice, I guess. I don't know. How are you guys doing? Doing good? The world hasn't exploded. I did read an article that had to deal with that. Oh God, I almost feel like there's no need to just talk in a fakeness way of it. It's more of I should just go ahead and talk. What was the article? UFOs leave radiation burns and unaccounted for pregnancies and Patreon report claims. So I'm like, oh, this is cool. It's always fun to read stuff like that. I don't know about you, how you feel about the background on my phone is Obama smoking weed when he was 18. If you didn't know this, apparently Obama smoked so much weed that they called him, instead of Barack Obama, they called him Barack Gandra. That's what I believe it was called. That's what they called him, something like that. You can Google that. I was looking at weird facts this week. Guys, I talk about how I go down deep into rabbit holes. One of the great ones I love doing all the time is I'll just do animal or thing plus pooping. And then it's just you'll get videos, you'll get GIFs, you get memes. And you just get all of it. You can get facts. You just read. And that's my way of, instead of going and reading some sort of part of the newspaper that has to do with the economics or, fine arts, I read shit like that. And I learn that, weird things like, Barack Obama, or that, giraffes have no vocal cords. That was what I learned last week. Just weird things. You just learn shit. Octopus have 3 hearts. That's the thing. You just learn these. You just know these things. You learn these things, and it's weird. And it's also fun too. I like looking up words. I like words, looking up them and figuring out okay, you learn the root word, because everything's Spanish, English. What's so interesting if I could be able to do it in Spanish? Do I hear a Spanish word and figure out the root word and then be able to do the same thing I do in English? Because with English, I'm not saying it's easy, but it's easier than it would be for me doing it in Spanish. But you find the root word and then you use context clues and you kind of figure okay, based on that, this is what it is. And so literally, when people say literally, people use it incorrectly all the time. It's I'm literally so upset I'm shooting to the moon. It's that you can't literally do that because you're not doing that. But I'm literally shaking because of like the information you told me. Like it works like that. It works. You can use it for that. But like, was it ironically? I think you can use that ironically. What's You know when you just like sit there and you just like let there be silence for a second. You're like But anyway, about UFOs, yeah, I don't know if you I would love to see it. Oh, I don't think I've told you guys this story. So it was like probably like maybe like 3 weeks ago, going on 3 weeks. My friend, they're like, oh, we baked these edibles. We made these edibles, and so like they bake them and sell them. They have their card. It's halfway legal in Missouri now. It's really fun. It's really cool. They have a business with it, and they're like, hey, here's a test one. Just take this. Make sure you're done for the day. You then you eat it. Then I'm like, okay, and I'm like, so I ate half of it, and I'm like, okay, and then what's so interesting with me when I do eat it, like I feel it with like the first like 20 minutes because like my metabolism is super fast. And so my body just kind of like takes food. Whenever it does get food, it just takes it and just immediately starts trying to like push it into like for energy and for usage for the body. It's really cool. I'm lucky. Well, I don't weigh that much. Like I'm as much like as though it's like I'm muscular. My bones though are light. I have light bones, and so I'm a light heavy, really, if you want the truth. Like, because I weigh close to 200 pounds. But if you were to, like, because it's so funny, like, when people, like, form tackle with me, they're like, damn, John, like, you weigh, like, 210, but you feel so easy. You're so light to pick up. It's like, because, like, I'm not thick. I'm not built super thick. I've had to build all the thickness that I have just because naturally, like, I'm, Honduran and Egyptian. A little bit of Greek in there. And so like, fuck, these are like not big people. These are tiny little people. So I just got lucky that I'm 6'1", and then, with all that stuff. And like, I don't know, how in the fuck did this get from this to UFOs? See, that's the beautiful thing about doing a solo podcast. It was just going to go up, down. And have you noticed like my mood this week is like super chill, super relaxed. Like, but oh yeah. I remember now. It has to do with UFOs. Well, anyway, so I got super baked super quick, and I went outside because I was like, I'm going to do some like nighttime photography, which I'm going to do tonight again. But so I was out there and I looked up and I saw like this, this thing, and I'm like, it looked like it was hovering. I'm like, I don't know if it was a star. I'm like, oh my God, it'd be so cool if it was a UFO. I'm like, this would be so cool. So I just I stood there for a little bit. I just watched it, and it just hovered, and it just hovered, and it just hovered. And I'm like, okay, if it stays there, or if it moves, then I know it's a UFO. And then I went back out like maybe like 45 minutes later, and it had moved a little bit. Then I realized, I'm like, oh, it's just a fucking star because it's falling, like, because of like it went from here to like here. So it wasn't like it went from here to like down here then up. It was like, or moved all the way around. It was just like it made a clear path that it was clearly just on a projection of the fact that the earth is moving. So that star is going to move too across the screen. I mean, if like it was a screen, then it'd be like, it started off here, then it's like now it's here. So I'm like, or here, it went directly across over. So I'm like, oh, this is nothing. This is just clearly a fucking star. I'm like, John, you're fucking baked, you dipshit. Like, what the hell are you doing, dude? Like, that's so you silly little goose. And then I'm like, you know what? Drink some water, go to bed, and I'm done. And I was done for the day. I was like, that was interesting. But I was like, oh, but I want to believe in UFOs. I really do. I want to believe in it. I hope and I wish, but the thing is, like, I just never seen any of that stuff. It's the same thing with like ghosts. Like, I am totally down with like, yeah, like if there's ghosts, okay, like let's see it. Like I want to see one. Like it would be like if I saw one, then I would be like, okay, this is some real stuff, but I've just never seen it. And like I even had like my last studio is apparently haunted, and like not one incidence with me and that ghost. And what I like to think is like, so maybe sometimes like if there are ghosts and they meet me like, he's just so fucking high. Like, it's just like, he's in his own head. Like, he's not even paying attention. He's not like he's like aware of anything. He's all in his own fucking head. He's like looking down, looking up, kind of like writing shit down. There's no point. Like, it's not like I can do anything. And like, I would assume like, but again, like, what would a ghost want to fuck with me with? Like, what are they going to get out of it? Like, I'd be like, oh, that's cool. Well, now there's a ghost in here. Well, I would look at it like not like a problem, but I'm like, okay, well, do I need to put some sage? Do I need to like get a priest up in here? Do I need to, get some rabbi? Like, I don't know. What do I need to get so this guy can like, our person, because God forbid I like give a gender to this ghost, like, and it's like, John, I was totally okay with just being up here sharing this area with you, but now since you misgendered me, and he'd be like, hey, it's like, no, like, it's just like, what would I do? Like, what, I'm like, so, and that's how I do it. But like, I would love to be able to see something. If I could just see it, if I saw one, I'd be like, yeah. And the thing is, like, I have to keep on thinking that it's not going to ever happen, because at this point, we all have iPhones. We all have things. Like, I even had my iPhone, and I was able to, with taking pictures, and I was able to clearly take pictures of the star that I clearly thought was a UFO. And I'm like, oh, it's not a UFO. It is just clearly just a star. So, and I'm like, all right, well, this was fun. This was a fun little thing, because I get myself super excited, because I'm like, oh, I'm going to be the one. I'm going to be the one who finds, I'm going to be the one who, like, the UFOs chose. Because why would they choose me out of all the people? I would assume they would probably pick someone who's a little bit quieter. They're not going to pick some schmuck who talks on a goddamn microphone. And it's like, but who knows? Do they even know what a microphone is? I'm assuming they can, like, do hyperspeed. I would assume they know what a microphone is, or they would have some sort of. Actually, that'd be kind of interesting. Then they can do like hyperspeed, and then they come down to the United States. Like, what are you doing, dude? And they're like, oh, well, come here. And I'm like, okay, so make some sort of sound into it. And they make a sound, and I'm like, okay, now see those little waves? Now watch. I'm gonna pause it. I'm gonna play back. It's the same sound. Like, holy shit, what the hell is this? I'm like, a microphone and a recorder. It just records the sounds of what you make. And they're like, holy fuck, dude, are you a god? I'm like, no, dude, there's a lot of people that can do this. Like, and I just like, I show them like podcasts and music, and they become Beatles fans, sadly. And it's just like, it'd be an awful experience. And they go back and like, listen, there's this band called the Beatles. It's like, well, they're not around anymore, but they were a band at one time. It's like, what's a band? It's like, well, it's a group of humans or people from Earth, and they play these things. They play different devices. And like, what's a device? It's like, well, I don't know, would they know what device is? Like, would they speak English? Like, how would they even be speaking? See, these are the things, like, you just think insane thoughts. Like, this, for me, this is just, you guys are really, really getting a deep, dark dive into what my thoughts are. Like, this is legitimately what I think a lot of the time. I'm like, what? I'm like, what? If we did everything, like, what did that? And blah, blah, blah. And like, because I would like to think that I would be able to be chill and calm, but I'm probably going to be scared. But it'd be interesting to sit down and talk with, like they put me on a ship with aliens, and I'm like, okay, what's this? What's that? I'm like, can we just walk around for a bit? Can I just like ask some questions? It's like, well, like, you guys have me up here. I mean, like, fuck, like, can I at least get something out of this as well? And they're like, but dude, we're going to clear your brain right after this. I'm like, trust me, you think anyone's going to believe me? Like, and I like send him like a link to like my videos, and like, yeah, no one's going to listen to anything that he says. So it doesn't really matter. And then like, they would just tell me all this stuff. It would just be, and I'm like, oh my God, really? Like, yeah, we can see everything. It's like, we've just been watching you guys for a long ass time. It's like, the reason why we started doing this, because this is actually a real conspiracy theory that like there was a spike in UFO sightings right after World War II, or after like, we bombed Japan, or United States bombed. I had nothing to fucking do with it. I wasn't even alive. So should not take any sort of credit with that, because I was not anywhere involved. I was not even around. nowhere around. I was in a man's urethra. So yeah. Well, that works. Anyway, so like, yeah, I have like some of the weirdest shit. I wrote down some of the weirdest shit this week because I don't know. So it's gotten to this point, like, so these podcasts are just kind of like, I do this every week. I talk for 30 minutes on in front of a camera, microphone, lights, clapper, all that shit. And now it's just normal. Like, it's just somewhat normal now. Like, I'm only thinking, like, I'm like, if I get 150 fucking episodes into this is going to be just like a cakewalk. But I don't know. I wrote down some of the weirdest things, and usually at the time when I write them down, I'm like, these are great, and like, this is just fucking podcast gold. But I got nothing. I don't know. Have I ever told you about when I first moved to the States, I thought, so I knew I was from Honduras. I knew that. It was just kind of known. Just one of those things. You just know these things. And then I remember watching golf, and I was watching Tiger Woods play. I couldn't have been 7, 8 years old. And like, even with like Sammy Sosa, like, I thought Sammy Sosa was brown. He was dark skinned because he wasn't, because he was black, because he played baseball and he was outside. Same thing with Tiger Woods. I'm like, he's black? I'm like, what? How is he black? And it's like, well, he's black. So, but I thought he was just, the reason why he was dark is he played a sport outside. It just made more sense that way. That made more sense. But like, this isn't that funny how simple how a child's brain works in that way? It's just interesting. I wrote that down, and that's about it. That's about all the thought of it was. But I just thought it was interesting because, like, there had to have been, like, if I thought that, there had to have been other people that thought similar to that. But I think a lot of it had come with, like, being adopted. And so being light complected and then being adopted by Caucasians who are also basically this complexion. So it just made it easier to pass, or I just never thought about it that much, because I was like, well, if I'm like this and they're like this, and then like they're like only like this because they're outside, or someone's like darker skinned because they're outside, I was just kind of like, okay, well, that's about it. Like, there's nothing else to think about. Like, I mean, like, we're all the same, right? And it's true. There's the only reason why anybody is darker versus lighter is simply just for a survival technique. It's a survival mechanism. That's it. Preaching to the choir, but you know, it's just one of those things. That Euphoria show, I feel like it's just because I think maybe it's because of my tone this week. I'm just kind of super fucking chill. I just want to. It's, what time is it? It's like 11:06 on a Thursday, 4/7/2022, and I'm just like, you know what, bro? Like, if I'm just like chill, relax, I can get it done. I have like 10 minutes, like actually just like 11 minutes left on this podcast. I'm like, you know, we're just in the final. We're in the back 9 of this podcast right now, just hanging out, talking. UFOs. What are we? UFOs. Fucking tan people. But I'm like coming out with like the super like chill, like I'm usually like super more hyper, but I'm just like, I think, you know what? Usually I don't drink my first beer until I actually get on to set, and I'm like, while like this is technically my second one, but I've taken like 4 drinks out of it, maybe 4, 5 at most, and I'm just like, well, like, yeah, like normally this would be like my first one. This is my second one, so I'm just like, I'm a little more chill. I'm a lot more relaxed, because you would see this on my second beer, like the beginning of my second beer, because like oh god, so like it's actually, we should probably talk about this, because this is kind of interesting, because it actually kind of spawned a weird thing today. So I was watching the news this morning before I like went to the gym, and they were talking about like how just one drink for women can cause cancer. And I was like, well, fuck. I'm like, if it does it for women, I'm like, why is there not, why there's such a good chance that it could happen to men? Because what happens is like, it's a high increase of throat cancer, colon cancer, liver cancer. And I'm like, well, shit. And like the doctors, like there's like multiple doctors, like it literally, there's no benefits of doing this, guys. There's no benefits in drinking alcohol. All you're doing is fucking killing yourself. Really, you're basically, because, well, you're right. You're poisoning yourself. And it's like, it's made me think, like, I'm like, man, maybe I should stop drinking. And if I just, but I'm like, it's not like I drink that much anyway. So that's what's so funny is the fact that, like, I don't drink that much as it is. Like, I'll have like one, like two of these in a night, maybe. Most of the time it's just one because I don't have it till like 12:30, and I just have one, and then I'm like done for the night. So I'm like, So it's not like a habit that's like really meaningful. It's just like a routine thing that's become now. But like it would take me 2 weeks, and I wouldn't even think about it anymore. And so it's like, well, shit. Should I just go back to like not drinking anymore? And like nothing's wrong. Like it's not like I have a problem. But that thing scared me. It kind of did, because it's like if I'm hearing it from like multiple doctors that it's like it just doesn't do anything. There's zero benefits to the body. I'm just like, fuck. Like I'm like, at least like if I'm gonna do that, I should eat something like, you know, gummy bears. If I eat gummy bears or something like that, then like maybe I'm like, okay, it's better. At least like it's more enjoyable than drinking this. And I'm not gonna have a hangover. There's no chance of having a hangover with gummy bears. So I'm like, is this it? I'm gonna drink the last 3 of these beers and then I'm gonna be done. It's like, well, fuck. It's like, well, fuck. I'm like, well, nothing's wrong with it. I'm like, maybe I should go on then again. Like, because I've done it before. I've gone years without, like, having a sip of alcohol and not even thinking about it. I would just be like, well, I can't drink tonight because if I drink, there's a good chance I'll drink too much and then I might be too hungover and want to sleep in and I won't be able to film. And that was my mindset. And so that was my mindset for, like, 3-4 years, like, straight, like, just, like, real hard for a while. Even in college, even when I was out of college, I never drank that much. Even I went to a couple parties, but most of the time when it happened is like I lived in states where pot was legal, and so I would just, if I would do anything, I would just smoke pot, and then I would just hang out at the party. I didn't drink water, and I would just have just as much fun as the people who get drunk, and you know, I would play beer pong, but then all the drinks I'd give to my friends, and then I just, you know, I'm just like, yeah, I'm just having fun, man. I'm just having fun. They're like, well, are you doing anything? I'm like, well, you know, for all you know, I could be on Molly right now, and I could be on cloud 9. And they're like, that's true. I'm like, exactly. And then we would just go on with the party. Just, I don't know. So like, I'm thinking like, I think this might be the end of drinking. And it's not hard, and like I work out too much for it to like become a situation, because all those bad habits can easily just get burned out by me working out. It's weird. That's like the one cool thing that I do have, is that I can burn out the bad idea of like, I'm like drinking, like, but I'm like, well, if I don't drink and like 6-7 days go by and I feel great because I don't even have one beer, with a chance if I drink it too late and it just like, you know, I'm maybe drinking on like an empty stomach, and it just maybe causes me to have, you know, just a little bit of an upset stomach the next day when I work out, versus if I don't drink any at all, my body doesn't feel any of that because my body's never had any of it. So, you know, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. If you can't tell, I'm definitely stretching this one subject. Can you tell? We have like 5 minutes left. But what was I going to talk about? Like, what was I saying? Like the Euphoria thing. So the Euphoria thing is like weird to me. So I watched pretty much all of season 2. Actually, I take that back. I watched maybe like 5 at best. 4 episodes. of that show, and it's just weird. It's just what's weird to me is that these are there's like 23-year-old actors, 22-year-old actors. They're adults, young adults, very young adults, but they're portraying like 16, 17-year-olds, and then we're watching these adults pretend to be kids fuck, and you're just like, because in any other circumstance this would not be acceptable, but because it's on an HBO show it's acceptable. And I'm like, I don't like watching this because I don't like seeing any of this, because I don't like seeing the boobs, because these are not supposed to be like, they're 23-year-old boobs, but they're supposed to be 17-year-old girl boobs that you're seeing, because that's what she's portraying as a 17-year-old, and you're like, I don't like seeing these boobs. If you're trying to put this fucking seal on it, it doesn't make sense to me. It's kind of gross. And so I'm like, oh, let's not do this. Can we not do this? Can we just maybe not make the show? Because no one is asking for the show. And like, don't get me wrong, there's moments where it's kind of cool, where it's sadly like seeing this person like slip into like this drug-filled life is interesting to me. And it's not because it's just, because it's like, it's so sad, because it can easily happen to anybody. And that's what's so interesting in watching it occur, which is fucked up to say, and like, that's probably not healthy. That can't be healthy to think like that, to be like, oh yeah, it's cool to see the demise of a human being, like when everyone always preaches about how life is so precious. It's like, oh, this is not good. I should be watching this. I don't like this. I don't like feeling like this. And it's like, oh, like I feel like I was on that drug, like in that intense moment, and it's like not a good thing. And I know it's just art. A movie you guys should watch is definitely, and I know some people are gonna be like, what the fuck, John? Power of the Dog got nominated for Best Picture. The director won the Oscars for Best Director. Very interesting movie. It's a film noir, so if you're not familiar with a film noir, what it is, it's like, it basically like, it takes a situation, so it could be everyday life, and it shows you like the squeaky clean beautiful version above, how it's beautiful, and then it slowly starts showing you like over time, kind of like when you date somebody, how some people, the more you date them, the more beautiful they become, versus like someone, the longer you get to know them, the more that they can't pretend to not be the real person who they are. And so it's really like that. And so you see these you start seeing the negative aspects of people over time and over again. So like, this movie like took you on this crazy ride of like making you think that like this cowboy is this asshole, and like how he's fighting certain urges. And then it shows you this couple who just got married, and then it shows you this boy, and then you think like this guy and the cowboy and this boy, something's going to happen between them. And it's weird. And then at the very end, it kind of like, in my opinion, it redeems itself, because it takes you on a really long journey, but it's a really white bummer movie. That's what it is. And I understand if people think like that, but like, it's a Western, and it was shot so beautiful. So for me, like, I could watch that movie because it was simply shot so beautifully. And I could be like, the story's whatever. Or I could be like, oh, okay, I could deal with like this part of the story is kind of blah, 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 blah. But these next series of shots are super beautiful, and they're so cool because of how they used a drone, and they came in with like a nice little push in, and they used all these really cool things. And it was really cool to see a movie that got nominated for an Oscars use like these really cool, like, they basically use like a DJ-7, like a DJ drone, to shoot like some of the shots, and it was cool. And you're like, oh, that shows that like you can use that kind of style, and it can make big things. But honestly, to tell you the truth, any kind of film can make anything if you just make it right. If it's a good story, people won't give a shit how you gave it. It could be all drone shots. People won't give a shit if it's a good story. It's goddamn truth. Same thing with like thing. You need to have really. All right, so I have about like a minute left, less than a minute. But key thing, little film tip. You should always have really great audio video can suffer. Help with lights, that will help a lot. But yeah, just have that. That's always going to be helpful. And always have a good story. All right, I'll see you guys on the next episode. All right, bye.